Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. It's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. It is Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and that means no BS job search advice. And frankly, this morning I'm going to give you some very direct information that I think could be very helpful in getting you focused, okay? So here's point number one I want to start with. Point number one is, right now there are 14 million people who are out of work in the United States. There are more people who right now are underemployed, but there are 14 million who are out of work altogether. Right now, there are 3 million jobs available in the United States. Do you think there's a little bit of competition? Not only that, in a lot of fields, there is a condition where they can't find the talent. Now, there are a variety of reasons for it, but the fact remains is a lot of employers in a lot of fields can't find the skilled individuals that they're looking for. So what do you think the problem is? Now, I think there are two issues. One is a skills disconnect. Actually, as I think about it, there are three issues. A skills disconnect is one thing, and that's, do you have the knowledge that's necessary, to get the job that they're trying to fill? I don't want to minimize that one. That's a huge issue because firms are demanding more and more of employees. Matter of fact, many firms have in effect outsourced their job training programs to employees. They expect you to pay for your education because, frankly, they don't want to and they don't have to. So they're expecting you to spend money on your continuing education. Number two is, I think a second factor is, many people are, frankly, incompetent on interviewing and job hunting. And that one's a huge issue for people. So I really encourage people to get out there and push real hard and work at finding work. I think there's a third one, which is around price. And before you get to the whole offshoring thing and blaming people in India and China for why you're out of work, I think you ought to spend more time looking at the first two issues because those are the primary ones. Many employers would really prefer not to go overseas because although it has an impression in the popular media as though it's this wonderful be-all and end-all for filling jobs and getting work done, it's a huge headache. For many individuals working at companies, they're now in the position where, frankly, they have to operate 24/7, with people overseas. It's exhausting. You're expecting individuals to work nonstop to accommodate schedules. And for many organizations, that's too much. So they, frankly, would prefer many of these jobs be in the U.S., but, between salary, benefits, regulatory issues, and what have you, it becomes too expensive. And, cost of doing business. I lived in New York for many years, and everything costs more in New York. Why is that? Because state and local government taxes everything more than almost any other place in the country. So the cost of your electric was higher than any place else in the country. You paid commercial rent tax, so your real estate costs, your cost for renting or leasing a space was that much higher. So firms are trying to maintain their cost structure any way that they can. And frankly, that comes down to wages and training. So I'm encouraging you, if you can't get better at what you're doing, you got to get better at how you present yourself because these are really competitive times and they're only getting worse. Like there was a statistic that was quoted in Business Week this week, and I just want you to hear this one because it's astonishing. The U.S. is projected to create 47 million jobs by 2018. Now, whether that's true or not, that's the number that's being quoted. So even if you think it's going to be half that amount, follow the next number, and that is 1/3 of those jobs are going to require a bachelor's degree. Translated, of the 48 million that are going to be created, 32 million are going to be for a different kind of skilled labor than we've needed for the last 20 years. So your choices are real simple. Number one is, improve yourself, both from a work perspective and from a job interview or job search perspective. Number two is go into a different field. Number three, frankly, and I don't want to minimize this because it involves a huge risk on an individual's part, and that is move to where the jobs are for what you do. There's often a disconnect in local labor markets, and individuals. I'll use again New York as an example. New York is the home of Wall Street, and there are a lot of Wall Street operations jobs available. But there are also a lot of people who do that kind of work in the New York area, and frankly, far more are looking for work than firms are trying to hire them. So there are secondary markets where these skills are needed. Charlotte, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. I can go through a whole list of cities where similar skills are needed. I got to tell you, there's an old joke by the comedian Sam Kinison when he was talking about hunger in different parts of the world. And he said, I wouldn't send them food. I'd send them a U-Haul truck and tell them to move where the food is. Well, frankly, move where the jobs are. You can stay looking for work where you are now and beat your head against the wall competing with everyone, or you can move to a different market and take the hit now because, frankly, jobs aren't coming back so fast in this country. So, I'm going to push you a little bit about getting out and about and looking at some geographically diverse areas. So if you're in Charlotte and you're finding it difficult to find work, look at some of the regional areas and look at some of the areas outside that market. Consider a job that requires travel. You don't have to wait until you're about to go broke to open things up because by then it's too late. Employers engage in a process where it all takes time for them to evaluate and assess people. Practice your skills, and I want to give you a couple of questions to look at, especially if you're in white-collar roles, because it's not just simply them asking you, tell me about yourself and what you're doing now that firms look for, especially on the senior levels. Obviously, they go into more detail about your work, but they also want to get an idea of, if I Googled you, what would I find? Okay? What do you do to stay focused? What do you do to build and manage and maintain your network of people? Because especially for a veteran individual, for a senior person, or a sales professional, your network is part of what they try to hire. Because as a sales professional, your network is who you've already sold to. As a senior manager or director or an executive, well, they want to know who you can tap into for advice or who to hire, people who might follow you. On Wall Street, when firms hire veteran professionals to run functions, they're looking to hire an entire team of people. So they want to know, do you have that team who's going to follow you? They want to know what you do to stay relevant. They want to get an idea of the kind of creative or innovative solutions you've put together, or walk through a time when you've administered change. What you've done when there's been a difficult set of circumstances, and you've had to come up with a creative solution and implement it within an organization. Firms are much more demanding these days of their potential hires. And I got to tell you, for some of you who are out of work right now for any length of time, you got to cut your price. Warren Buffett was talking this weekend, and whether you like what he said about wealthy people getting their taxes raised or not, I thought he hit on one thing that I thought was very useful. And his encouragement, and I've heard other business leaders say it, but Buffett has such a cachet in the United States that I feel compelled to mention his name, but you can stay out of work and looking for the price that you used to earn, or you could just get back to work and take the hit. Now, I'm not talking about a $200,000 person taking a job for $120,000. Frankly, that kind of a salary reduction requires that you accept a far lesser role, and frankly, you're probably not going to be qualified for that. But if you're a $200,000 or $250,000 person and you take a $20,000 or $30,000 hit, well, you figure out the math. By taking that hit and getting back to work instead of holding out for that $20,000 or $30,000 more, how many weeks of income have you actually lost by holding out, especially if you have nothing else going on? For the $100,000 person who takes $5,000 less, that's 2.5 weeks. You do the math for your circumstances. But especially now where firms often have lots of choices and they don't have to pay premium money like they did during the boom times, you've got to get yourself back to work or risk losing your career. So I'm going to push you a little bit to get out and about and talking to people so that this way you can get back working, because the way I see it, no matter who's elected president next, we're going to have complicated times. And you don't want to be out of work when the next administration takes over, because we're going further downhill in one way or another. Let me talk with you about a couple of the jobs I'm recruiting for. So I have one role for a consultant. It's an employee of a consulting firm, for a lead architect. A background in architecture plus WebSphere, WebLogic, J2EE, .NET base, plus a relational database. Like a developer architect who's willing to do 80% travel. They'll train you in BPM technology and have you work with different clients around the country. This is going to a base of about 140 plus bonus. Then in Stamford, Connecticut, I have a role for a Microsoft infrastructure specialist. So, think in terms of being responsible for all Windows-based servers for this organization, Exchange, a responsibility for Active Directory and DNS and DHCP and group policy, backups, data backups, and experience doing this for another organization, going to about 110 on a base plus bonus. A PeopleSoft administrator in New York, going to about 120. So think in terms of HR and benefits administration, experience maintaining multiple tools versions within a common server environment at each tier. Again, going to about 120 on a base plus bonus. I've got a private equity investor relations specialist in Jersey City, and that's exactly what they want. Experience in private equity investor relations. That's going to about $85,000 per year plus bonus. They do require Investran experience. Then there's a test automation script developer in New York, going to about 105. So they want someone who has experience developing scripts using descriptive programming, actual functional tester. I have a bunch of other positions available that you can see on my website, jeffaltman.com. But the real thing I want to talk with you about is getting more information and getting more training. Now, job search information, I have an abundant supply on my website. So while you're at jeffaltman.com, go exploring. There are lots of places to post your resume. There's information from previous issues of No BS Job Search Advice e-zine, and you can read them on the site, and while there, sign up for a complimentary subscription to it. I publish it every Tuesday with advice. I have jobs that you can search. I have information about my books available. You can order them online for the Kindle, the Nook, and PDFs as well. There's so much that I want to tell you, and I'm just going to tell you for now. Come back to this show next Monday. We're going to have a lot more information where I'm going to try and help you get better at job hunting. And if you're interested in advertising on this show or advertising a position here for my audience, contact blogtalkradio.com. They'd be happy to talk with you about it. It's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I'll be speaking with you next Monday. Take care.